Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. Our guest today is Alex Ohnona from Vida Capital. They're a Portuguese golden visa fund, and we welcome Alex to the podcast.
Hello. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here. Very excited to be able to have this conversation with you today.
Thanks, Alex. Very much appreciated it. So we've already been working together. We've met in person in Portugal and Lisbon. And I first heard about you. I was in this Mexico group chat, and you or your team had posted in there about the Portugal Golden Visa, and you were kind of going after the Mexican market for these Golden Visa funds. And where do we start? I mean, maybe you could just tell us what the Portugal Golden Visa is, who it's for, and the benefits someone might get from investing in a Portugal Golden Visa fund.
Of course. So the Portuguese Golden Visa, it's what's called a citizenship by investment program, meaning it's a program that's offered by the government to provide benefits such as access to residency and ultimately citizenship or a passport through making an investment. The program requires an investment into a fund, a regulated fund of 500,000 euros, which is about $500,000 more or less these days. And with that, an investor and their family have the benefit of receiving a residency during the initial 5 years, which allows for them and their family to travel freely in all of Schengen without any time limitation, all of Europe basically. And also allows them to be able to have access to live, work, have access to public education, public healthcare in Portugal. And also, after 5 years, it allows for them to be able to apply and receive a Portuguese citizenship or European citizenship, right? With which they have the right to live, work, have access to any public services such as free healthcare, free education in any country in Europe. In terms of who it's for, it really varies. I mean, we do have investors who come from a lot of different parts of the world. We have a lot of investors from Latin America. We have a big, also majority of investors who come from the US, which has been the biggest growing demographic applying for Golden Visa program in Portugal in the last few years, and became the biggest demander in 2024. So we're seeing a lot of demand coming from there. And typically these individuals kind of vary quite a lot. But a lot of what we see is people who want to prepare for some form of plan B. So it doesn't mean that they see kind of any imminent change in their life that they want to move, let's say in the next few months, but it's rather something that they'll do, keep on the kind of back burners for some time. And after 5 years, they're secured to receive this citizenship. And a lot of the reason why this program is particularly attractive is because it only requires 2 weeks every 2 years of physical presence. So about 1 week a year. And with just spending 1 week a year in Portugal, one can qualify for the Golden Visa and after 5 years apply for citizenship. So it allows for it to be this kind of plan B in the sense that it doesn't have any impact on tax structure or on lifestyle change, let's say.
Yeah, and this is something I always thought it was 7 days every year, and only in the past couple months that I've been getting more into this that I learned that it was 14 days every 2 years. So it's like an average of 7 days a year, but you could conceivably not visit for whatever, a year and a half, and then do 14 days straight or something like that, right?
Precisely, exactly. So it's adding even more flexibility. And the reason why it's organized like this, just to be like to have the full understanding, is that the residency cards that are given, they have a 2-year validity. And the requirement is that by the end of the validity of the current residency card that you have, in order to be able to renew it for another 2-year cycle, you need to have been present during 14 days. So as you said, you could not come for 20 months, for example, and over the last 4 months be present for 14 days. They also don't need to be consecutive. And that would enable for you to qualify to renew the temporary residency card all the way until you get to the 5 years, at which point you could apply for either permanent residency or citizenship and obtain the passport.
Okay. And this question's a bit in the weeds, but people ask these things. So the renewal, does the resident have to be in person to do the renewal, or can this be done via like a power of attorney?
It's a great question. So the investor or any golden visa applicants, whether it's the main investor or let's say their family members, do not need to be in Portugal in order to renew the residency card. This is actually done by the legal representative or the attorney that is chosen, let's say, by the investor at the beginning, and we help with all of this process, of course. So there's no need to be present. The only time which is needed to be present are a few things. You also don't need to be present to start the process. So many investors are starting the process with us. They don't need to travel to Portugal in order to start this, right? This is something that happens in parallel with the legal representative taking care of all of this administrative process on their behalf. And so this is really kind of how it's structured here. The times that they need to come is, of course, the 2 weeks every 2 years of physical presence. And ultimately, when you get closer to getting citizenship and the passport, then there's a need to actually come and have an appointment to do, to take kind of fingerprints and do, a few
Right, that
of the
makes
steps
sense.
that exactly that are required, let's say, in order to actually prepare for getting the citizenship and the passport.
Very cool. And yeah, I've made some videos about different Portugal visas in the past, some tweets as well. And it's just a different demographic than the type of person that would go for like a D7 or D8 visa, where you don't have to invest, but you have to do very significant physical presence in Portugal, where you're looking at least 6+ months a year, maybe 9+ months a year to keep that residency active and be on a path to citizenship. Whereas with this, it's like you said, it's a plan B, and it totally makes sense for the type of person that can afford a $500,000 investment, take a little vacation to Portugal every once in a while, work towards a European passport. I think for Americans, Latin Americans, anyone in a privileged position, this is just an absolute no-brainer for their families to work towards a European passport, very strong. And the path is made very easy, I think, very straightforward.
Correct. It's precisely what you're saying. We're seeing it's a very different process, right, to obtain another type of visa versus a golden visa. If someone is looking to imminently move to Portugal and live there permanently and is comfortable committing to being at least 6 months a year for the next number of years, let's say in Portugal, then certainly there are a number of other visas, as you mentioned, that could be more adequate for these let's say these individuals, and we're always happy to advise them on this if this is the case. The golden visa is really more catered to people who want to be able to have the flexibility, either because they have no imminent plan to move right now to Portugal,
Mm-hmm.
or because maybe they really like, let's say, Portugal and they want to come maybe for 6 or 10 months next year, but they don't want to be bound to, for the next 5 years, have to be there 6 months a year. Because what would happen otherwise is, let's say they come and they have another type of visa. If in 2 years they decide they want to be back in the US, or they want to maybe, start traveling a lot, have an opportunity in a different country, and they don't comply with the minimum amount of stay, then they would break their residency, right? And so they wouldn't have access to obtain citizenship. So with this, it gives them a lot of flexibility. If someone wants to, let's say, make the investment and wait a year, and then they come here and spend 2 years, kind of full time here,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that, they want to be again on the road or in a different country for the last 2 years, then they would still be able to apply and receive their citizenship at the end. So it's true that it comes with a higher investment requirement. It's also a sound investment. So for a lot of people, again, who can afford it, that's something that can be quite attractive. Um,
Yeah,
and the
let's
main thing
talk
is,
about the investment
yeah,
a bit, because it's not a donation. You're investing in a fund. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you guys invest in, and some of the details about the fund.
absolutely. So our fund is called Vida Capital. And the focus of Vida is to acquire underperforming or distressed hospitality companies, so hotels, apart hotels, touristic developments in Portugal, and turn them around. So we have the chance to be in a country where there are a lot of family owned or single owner owned hotels that are underperforming or not doing well for a number of years. We take a position to acquire those. We put a light kind of refurbishment process, which is mostly a cosmetic turnaround.
Mm-hmm.
We reopen these projects. We operate them in house, and then we stabilize them. And after a few years of being stabilized, we exit them basically. So you can think about it like a private equity turnaround for distressed hotels in Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
This is really the key focus for us.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by job stacking. If you're a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then Rolf Haltze, author of Job Stacking, guarantees you'll be able to double your income by implementing his paycheck multiplication layering method. This is the exact system Rolf has used to take his own income and those of many others beyond $20K a month. With this method, Rolf contractually guarantees that you'll be able to double your income in 45 days. So, if you're interested in unleashing your earning potential and doubling your income, then click the link in the description and book a call with Rolf right now. And would a distressed hotel be like abandoned, or what would be the state of it?
It's a great question. So they really vary. Ideally, we're looking for us, the sweet spot is something maybe that's not abandoned, but let's say that has been, let's say, missing a lot of love is a way we like to put it. Abandoned is considerable, but if it's abandoned for a number of years, then probably there's a level of maintenance or intervention that is required that would maybe bring the redevelopment to a higher level and maybe require a more, let's say, more intrusive refurbishment. And because we really want to try and minimize risk for our investors, our focus is really more on a kind of like more of a cosmetic turnaround, as I mentioned. So
light touch.
Ideally, we get something that the bones are good, like the structure is good, there's great potential, but it's just really poorly managed. So it's operating, but very low occupancy. Everything about it just doesn't really feel right. And then we come in, we change the concept, we change the brand, the operation, the look and feel, the design, the furniture, and we're able to create significant value with a minimal amount of investment and time, and be able to actually, get a lot out of this operation quickly after we take it over.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I imagine it's quite competitive, the bidding process for some of these properties, because I imagine there's a lot of other funds that are looking at these things, a lot of potential buyers, and probably not too many of these hotels in Portugal to go around.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So in terms of the supply of those, there's actually quite a bit. Given that Portugal, it's a very old country, it has around 80% of the hotels in Portugal are owned by a family. And I think of those, we have something like 80% of those families own only one hotel. So if you think about it, it's a very kind of fragmented market where, families go through a number of things, right? Sometimes it just moves from one generation to the next. Someone can fall ill. There's a lot of different things that can happen. And when these businesses are not kind of institutionalized or professionalized, they're much more exposed at, different risk of being able to have their operation go down for a number of reasons that can happen in their lives. So Portugal has a lot of these independent hotels, let's say, that come to a point of break or of mismanagement that gets them to, either they owe money to creditors or they're just not able to really kind of make ends meet with their operation. And so that's a way for us to step in. In terms of competition for acquisition, we found a bit of a sweet spot that works for us, which is that we're buying hotels usually around investments between 10, 15, maybe 18 million, which means that typically these tickets are considered very big for any kind of family in Portugal, typically, where they're maybe more looking at opportunities for 2, 4, 5, maybe 7 million. But they're also quite small compared to large, more international funds that are maybe looking at opportunities for like 50, 100, 120 million acquisition. And so what that allows for is for us to be in this kind of middle ground where we don't see so much competition at this time to be acquiring the same deals. Besides this, a lot of our work is really focused on sourcing and on having access to these off-market deals through a lot of our network and our team, which is very strong in Portugal. But we are seeing a bit of a trend in that way, and you're completely right. The numbers in Portugal are very, very attractive. The tourism demand has been through the roof and keeps on increasing here. And there's very little market penetration of international groups, international brands, such as, like, for example, the Marriotts, the Hyatt's, a lot of these groups, their biggest expansion plan for the next 5 years in Europe is Portugal because they have little penetration and they see the numbers make sense. You can buy hotels still for cheaper, and the occupancy and ADRs or average daily rates are becoming competitive with the rest of like the European capitals or the rest of European countries. So the profit or the return on investment that one can see here is significantly higher than what one can experience in a lot of these more stabilized markets like France, Italy, Spain, which have been, striving for many like decades already. And so there's a real kind of opportunity here. And as a result of that, we're seeing a lot more demand for it. And so a more competitive market as we step forward.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And that rings true for me. That when I think about it, I'm like, there really aren't that many Marriotts and Hiltons and stuff in Portugal. Maybe or maybe they just don't put a big logo on it to keep the aesthetic. But I guess that would be like a potential person that you would exit to. Is like you get it from the family, you spice it up, stabilize it, and then maybe it's like a Marriott or a big hotel group that would potentially buy these properties.
Exactly. So for us, actually, so the investment strategy, the way that we're working, and for example, we have already some investments that are completed, a lot of pipeline that we're working on. But the way that we're doing it is we're acquiring these hotels. Typically, we completely professionalize them. We work with, so we have this basically operator. There's one of the biggest operators here who's very focused on turnaround of distressed hotels in Portugal. This is one of the key focuses that we have. The other thing is we are working with international groups, particularly quite closely to the Hyatt Group, who has very strong expansion plans. They really want to have, I think they want to grow to about 35 hotels in the next 5 years in Portugal. And they currently have, less than five, right? So it's a really strong expansion plan for them. And so what we're doing is we're working closely to them and some other groups to be able to actually put their brand into some of the hotels that we're buying from now, be able to benefit from all this also big US demand that has been increasing, as you know, so much new US demand, which comes with a much higher disposable income, willingness to pay higher prices, desire for more premium or luxury accommodation. So we're very much going into this direction to be able to cater to this target demographic. And then once the assets are stabilized or the operations are stabilized with significantly higher profitability, to exit those to international funds or international groups, which there are a lot of who want a piece of the pie of Portugal. So right now there are a lot of pan-European, American, Asian funds who are trying to take a participation of the tourism industry in Portugal. But the challenge that they're having is that they're not finding the platform deals that they need, because a lot of these big funds, they're going to come to Portugal and they're looking for 150, 200, 300 plus million acquisitions, right? Because they're very large funds. And then they get to Portugal. And again, back to the conversation earlier, they're super fragmented. We're looking at hotels that are worth like 7, 8, 10, 12 million. They're mostly owned by a family who owns one hotel. So it's really hard for them. They don't have the bandwidth or the capacity to come and do that legwork of putting this portfolio together. But from an exit standpoint, for us, it's an amazing opportunity because we have this opportunity to create this platform of a few different hotels, maybe already with international brands that are yielding and stabilized, and exit those as a more of a yield play investment for some of these more scaled investors abroad looking for investment opportunities here.
Yeah, totally makes sense to me in terms of the value creation. Alex, I really want to hear a bit of the story about Selina. I don't know how much you go into or can go into, but I guess my understanding is you were one of the early employees at Selina, which are a lot of digital nomads and expats from our audience will know as the sort of digital nomad focused hostel chain that started in Panama. I've stayed at a lot of them. Like I've stayed at Selina's in Mexico, in Panama, in Brazil, and it's a cool thing. And I guess you were part of like the early team that expanded from a couple locations to 100 plus, something like that.
Correct. Yeah. So I joined in 2016 where there were two hotels at the time.
Just two. Wow.
It was very, very, very early stage, let's say. And I got really well along with the founders at the time. And I got really kind of excited about trying to kind of grow that. Over the course of about 6+ years, had a number of different roles and responsibilities, basically. But it was honestly one of the most incredible rides probably of my life, I would say. Very incredible concept team. I think what we're able to achieve was very much considered impossible by everyone around us. We were able to open, over 100 hotels during the course of maybe 6 years, which I'm pretty sure had not or has never still been done, given that we were in-house operations, right? So we're not doing like a licensing or franchising business. Each hotel was a hotel that was, our hotel that had our own team, our own staff. So some months, we would end up opening 6, sometimes 10 plus hotels in a month, especially towards the end of the year. And each hotel was, I don't know, 30, 50, 60 staff, right? So when you think about the amount of work that needed to go towards setting up the operations for such an expansion was crazy. And so I ended up being the vice president of expansion for this group, which got me to travel extensively around the world, as you can imagine, probably like 4 or 5 times a week, traveling for maybe 5 years, something like that. So a lot of moving around. And also, an amazing opportunity for us to really get to know and get to be good at, selecting the right types of hotels, the right types of investments, being able to do turnarounds that are efficient, right? Light in terms of time and investment, but that can really create value. Being able to also create destinations, which I think Selina was really, we're really, really good at this. Like, how do you take a hotel that's in a kind of tier 2, tier 3 area and make the whole environment come to life, right? The whole area. And, we became so good at this that there were, real estate developers in a lot of the markets that we were that would look where we're taking our next Selina and then would start buying, different assets on the block or around the block of what we're buying, because they were like, these guys are going to make this place come to life and make a destination from it. So it was a beautiful ride, and very, very grateful for everything I could learn, everything I could experience, I could do during that time, and still very close to a lot of the dear friends, let's say, that I was able to be on this chapter with.
Dude, I got a little story. I mean, I was in Brazil during the pandemic. I want to say this would be late 2020. And they were opening the Selina Copacabana.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you were involved in this one. I don't know. And so I was on the Selina website, I was looking at it, and it was super cheap. Like, it was like 25, $30 a night. And there was kind of an asterisk there, like, opening sale, there's still going to be some construction noise, something like that. So I booked it anyway. Got it like a 6 suite, like ocean view Copacabana seat with the bathroom in the unit, which is pretty rare for Selina. And it was like $25 a night or something, like really cheap. But the whole building was like still under construction. And I was kind of like, I guess I'm a curious guy. And so I, hit the elevator button and like went up to the penthouse or went up to the roof. And you go up there, and the elevator opened, and it was just cement bones. Like the top of the building wasn't even like built out yet. And so I got out of the elevator, and I was just chilling there in this like literally construction site with like literally construction site, like looking over Copacabana, nobody there. It was a very surreal thing.
There was a lot of dishonesty. So this is, I think this is what happens when we get our team to have to open, an outrageous amount of hotels per every month. You end up basically doing a lot of openings in, honestly, everything we were doing, I would say, was kind of impossible, right? And especially when we started Selina, and I was representing Selina at a lot of conferences, and I would go out and meet a lot of people from the industry, like senior people from all the top like hospitality groups. And we would talk a bit, and I would explain to them like our expansion plan and how we're growing, et cetera. They would say, well, that's impossible. It doesn't work like this. And you cannot refurb a hotel in so little time, et cetera. And so the truth is, we did a lot of impossible things, I would say, especially for industry standards. And a lot of times we would open hotels in, finishing to cook state, I would say, where
right.
A lot of things still needed a lot of adjustments. And I think the beauty is that in the end, the whole concept of Selina, which, the mission and vision of Selina being creating meaningful and authentic connections, is something that really kind of worked for us, in the sense that, people came, and of course, I mean, this obviously in some of these instances it could create a lot of discomfort, right? Because it's not fully ready, it's not perfect, it's not exactly to the standard.
Hmm.
But then many times people would still love their experience and become, big fans and stay with us. I mean, how many times I've traveled to places where I met someone who has like 25 bracelets of Selina, and they've
Oh,
been
wow.
living in Selina for the last like 9 months around the world, things like that. And they've been to 35 or 40 Selinas, and it's really powerful. And a lot of, I think what that was about the community that we're able to build. And so people would come, and a lot of the things about the experience itself would be very imperfect, but their experience would be so special because they met super nice people, because the staff was really friendly, because we were able to connect them with a lot of local experience and local community. And um, and I think that that's really something that allowed for us to make people maybe forget about these little imperfections and focus on things that really mattered. And for us, when we're building these projects and building these experiences, the focus was always about, you know we don't want to be the brand that people remember us because of the comfort of the pillow or of the mattress or something like this. They're going to remember us because they met this most incredible other human
Yeah,
in one of the places, and they had this beautiful connection, or because they learned something about local culture that was really powerful, really impactful for them. And so that was really the focus. And so I think in many ways we're cutting a lot of corners on the standard hospitality operation or way of thinking about things, and really focusing on the experience and community component that could really leave a strong kind of long lasting mark on
for
people's
sure.
experiences.
Yeah, they would really become like a social hub for not just the visitors, but also the locals. Like the Panama City one was like huge for locals. I mean, Bocas del Toro. I'd go out there, and all the locals from Bocas del Toro would go to the Selena to hang out. And you could go on and on. Playa del Carmen. It was all like locals that would come for tango night and stuff like that. So yeah.
It was a huge, huge, huge part of our mission. And for us, the whole idea was creating authentic and meaningful connections. For us, it had to be with the local community and with local experiences as well. And we've done crazy things. I mean, some of the hotels we had open, they were doing really well. Like food and beverage was doing well. Like restaurant bar was working well, but the locals were not going. And it was just like kind of basically all of the tourists who were staying there, even if some of them were like domestic tourists. And if we saw that that was the case, sometimes we kind of shut down the hotel, redid the entire concept, and reopened, even though financially it was working well, just so that we got to a concept that felt welcoming for the local community, so that we could have this blend. Because otherwise, we felt like it wasn't serving the vision and the purpose that we were building these for. So I'm glad that you're saying this, because it was really a very conscious effort and work to make sure
Hmm.
that they felt like this was their living room. At least for some of them, it's of course not for everyone,
Hmm.
but for enough so that there's this common interaction. Because we felt it was critical that people, when they come, are able to have this common connection with with the space, and the space, of course, includes the people who are from there.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you in part by Crema Social. Crema Social is like TikTok for international dating. It's an app you can download right now on your phone, and 3 out of 4 people on Crema are single women. The app was founded in Colombia, so unsurprisingly, there are a lot of Latinas on the app, by the way. So, how does it work? Crema Social is a social meal experience where you invite a hot girl for a lunch date via video call and food delivery. New concept, so you'll have to try it out for yourself, but this is probably the best way to meet Latinas before you visit the country. So if you're in Latin America or planning to visit Latin America, download Crema Social now and start getting dates right away. There will be a link in the description to download, or just search Crema Social on your favorite app store. Have fun, guys. Definitely. Really cool story. I mean, probably worth like hours of podcast in and of itself, but I know it's not your focus anymore. So we'll kind of like leave it there. We've established some authority in your ability to spin up these hotels and everything. And then how did you kind of how did this opportunity come about with Vida Capital and moving your focus to Portugal? Because you're French originally, right?
Precisely. So for me, eventually after I left Selina, I set up a boutique investment bank focusing on helping hospitality operators scale around the world. This is something that I had developed a lot of expertise for, and and my experience in Selina was very unique because no other group had scaled, at this scale, basically probably until now. And so there was a lot of kind of expertise that I could bring to the table for other groups, and I did that for a bit of time and eventually started doing a number of hotels. With Selina, we had opened, I believe, over 8 hotels in Portugal over the last, let's say, 6, 7 years. And so
Mm,
I really loved being here. I loved the opportunity of being here, etc. Then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, the one portfolio of all the, I think, 25 plus countries that we were in at the time for Selina, the one portfolio that kind of rebounded the fastest and did very well the first was Portugal post COVID. And so I was kind of thinking, wow, that's a really interesting opportunity. And then with that, I started doing a few projects here. And as things were developing, some of the investors that I were working with were telling me, we really like this investment strategy, let's say, and we'd be happy to just park some money with that. So instead of doing these kind of like group, we kind of did this like kind of club deals that I was doing here, where I'd find an opportunity, find a few investors for them, etc. Some of these investors were saying, we're happy to just park some money with you with this investment strategy and kind of do that. And in parallel, because I had been working in the kind of underperforming or distressed space, more and more opportunities were coming to our attention. And so it was kind of an obvious thing, like, we have the opportunities, the capital wants to be with us. So we're going to structure a fund where we can hold that capital and manage it on behalf of our investors in order to be able to, to develop a lot of these opportunities. And
mhm.
then, that became the idea and set up a fund. And that's been, almost 4 years ago now that we started this journey. And I was very lucky to be able to meet my business partner, Maria, who is a very complementary profile to mine, very different. She's not at all from hospitality. She's a M&A tax lawyer, um,
Mhm.
converted into investment banker for many years. So she's got kind of this legal tax structuring background. And yeah, we became a very, very strong team and we're able to, launch our first fund, which did very well, which we've now closed. And, we're now on our second vehicle, Vida 2, which is, very exciting. I can't believe we're already here, but that's where we are.
And Vita One just closed recently, right? That was the one that closed in January.
Precisely. Exactly. It just closed, exactly a month ago, basically.
And if, for people who don't realize, like in private equity, sort of like a fund will be open for like a year and a half or something, and you're already investing out of it. So you've been sort of investing out of that fund sort of since the beginning, and then this new fund will be sort of open for a while too.
Exactly. So the last fund basically closed about a month ago now, and this fund is already since then. So it's deployed. 25% of the whole fund is deployed. The rest of the 75% has a strong pipeline. We expect to deploy, meaning invest the rest of the fund by the end of year. And the
Wow.
new fund is now going to be open until the end of this year. So it's actually a short investment fundraising period. And the reason why we're doing this is that we're seeing a lot of increase in interest, and we want to keep the fund size to a you know very manageable or small amount, I would say, or well, medium amount, let's say probably 30 to 40 million, in order to stay, again, back to our earlier conversation, stay focused on opportunities that are kind of this mid tier where we're too big for families, but
Uh-huh.
also smaller than kind of the
So how
bigger.
does that work? So you're getting hotels in the 10, 15, maybe 18 million range. So are you only buying like three hotels, or you're, I guess,
It's a
using
great
debt as
question. So let's
well?
say if we get a fund of 30 to 40 million, because we leverage at 50% with the bank, meaning that we double that. So we're looking at a
Uh-huh.
fund of about 60 to 80 million approximately of actual investments.
Uh-huh.
And that gives us about, let's say, depending on the size, let's say between 4 to 5, 6 hotels maximum, I would say. And we think that's a good diversification. A few different areas in Portugal. It's good of a diversification, but it's also not too much. And so we feel that this middle ground is enough. And given the rate at which we've been fundraising now, we feel that end of year is a good amount of time for us to achieve that. And so we're going to cut it there so that we can have um, yeah, the right timing and the right amount of capital that we need in order to pursue the right diversification for the next fund.
That's cool. And where do you see the most sort of growth opportunities in Portugal? Is it down in the Algarve? Is it Lisbon? Is it somewhere more rural or something?
It's a great question. So for us, we like a few different areas, of which, I mean, Lisbon and Porto are interesting. We're very focused on the Algarve and on Alentejo and some parts of the north. Porto, we can still find some interesting deals, but again, given that we are looking for distressed deals, usually that we buy around maybe 30% discount from market value, it's quite significant, that are operating and that have a light refurb opportunity. To find deals that are that discounted in Lisbon, it's extremely, extremely unlikely. We are now working on a few deals, and they're really like, kind of personal, like contacts of like our team, personal contacts of our team, maybe someone who has a few hotels who doesn't have any, let's say, any children, and who's getting to a point where they want to get out. And maybe in some of these cases, we can really find like a gem. But typically, they're really hard to find because there's so much demand in like places like Lisbon. However, and prices in Lisbon have already risen like quite significantly, as you know. So the delta or the spread that can be made in terms of appreciation is somewhat capped. In comparison to this, if you look at some other regions in Portugal, like Alentejo, for example, parts of Algarve, these are places where the acquisition price is still quite low. The growth in terms of tourism is much higher. And the appreciation potential, the real appreciation that you see on value of such assets over the last, let's say, 5-7 years is considerably, considerably higher. And given that we're holding investments for about 5 years, I much prefer to buy in an area that is going to grow at, let's say, high single or low double digits versus something that's growing at 3%. The difference for me of a 3% growth versus something that's growing at like 8-9% a year, it's bringing a lot of security of return for the investors. And so this is why we're really focused on some of these opportunities.
Yeah. I just did a podcast with a guy. It's a different thing, but it's called Traditional Dream Factory. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I know them. Yeah.
Yeah,
The,
we just
the
we
old
just
chicken
recorded
farm.
yesterday. Yeah, it's like a chicken farm in
Yeah.
Alentejo. But it
Yeah.
looks sick now. It looks sick.
I haven't been for a while, but I know one of the people who's involved there in kind of building the project, and because I've done a lot of work on building or advising on building kind of intentional communities, eco villages, pretty large scale.
Hmm.
Um, we were actually in a kind of conference retreat around that with one of the guys from there,
Hmm.
and it's a super cool project. And the way that they're including blockchain technologies to try and help them with some of the way that the administration is run and things like this. I find it like very innovative, and I'm super curious to see because it can be a bit of a blueprint for a lot of projects around the world that are still trying to go in a direction like this, but that don't really have like a clear blueprint of what like a good model looks like, right? Because it's quite new.
Yeah. I interviewed Sam
Yeah,
Delesque.
exactly. Yeah, so he's that guy that I know. Yeah.
The French are taking over Portugal, man. I just don't know how I have to rent a car to get out there. He's like, yeah, we have a festival, March 22nd. Come out for the festival. I guess I got to rent a car and get out there, but I'm kind of down.
Yeah, I think it's super manageable, and also honestly, at the price of Ubers in Portugal, it's probably not that much of a stretch,
Just do
honestly.
like a
So
long distance Uber.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it's really not that far. It's probably like 1 hour, maybe something like that, maybe a bit more actually. So worth
Uh-huh.
worth checking, worth checking out.
Yeah. Yeah. For people who don't know, Uber is super cheap in Portugal. So could work.
Indeed.
Maybe a little harder to find someone to get back,
Take me
but
back, but somehow you find, somehow it's like there's there, because it has its own little town there, so they kind of
yeah,
have
yeah.
their own movement. And then some guy will be happy to have a long ride. Maybe some guy will, be like, I'm not sure, and then the next person will be like, amazing, getting a long ride, So
There's a way. There's a way. I'm thinking
exactly,
about getting a Tesla, honestly.
great, also a good option.
Yeah. Do you have a car?
I actually don't have a car. I have a parking here, and so I'm thinking that I should have a car to fill my parking because it feels like it makes sense,
Yeah.
even though I think it's not the right reasoning. But the truth is, Portugal is so convenient. Like Uber is so accessible, and then renting a car, I can rent like a brand new car for a few days for usually like 15-20 bucks a day, and so
Hmm.
I kind of feel like it's just a possession that I don't really need. another kind of liability, something to kind of consider to have to maintain, take care of. So I haven't really gone around to getting a car right now.
So how do you visit the properties?
Honestly, some people in the team have cars. Sometimes I'll go with them. I do a lot of train as well, which is
Uh-huh.
super convenient in Portugal because it allows me to actually work on it.
Yeah.
Like a train to go, for example, to our project in the south, the beachfront one, which is on the southern coast, like the edge of Portugal.
Uh-huh.
It's a 2 hour train, which is super comfortable. It's like $20, not even for the train. I can work on the train. It has internet. I can plug my iPad and get work done. And the train arrives like 7 minute Uber, from the place, which is like €3. So
Hmm.
that's pretty easy and simple. And if not, I can just rent a car in any. There's so many options. It's really easy to move around.
Good. Okay, that makes me feel better. So the Uber works well in the Algarve. I actually haven't been
Very
down
well.
the Algarve at all.
Very well. Very well. Very easy. They're all over. So it's super convenient.
Cool. Do you find for people who are looking at the Portugal Golden Visa, we were talking offline about how Ireland used to have a program, they no longer have a program. Spain used to have a program, they canceled it recently. I guess technically it's open till April, but it's effectively canceled. So now it's like Greece, Cyprus, maybe Italy. Do you find that you're actually having to compete with or compare with the other golden visas, or people are just sort of like Portugal or nothing?
Good question. I definitely find that we have to, I think it's really important for us to explain the difference between the programs because many people, they don't really understand and they think golden visa kind of, same thing everywhere. So many times we do have to explain to people to kind of help them understand the difference. Once people understand the difference between the programs, it becomes an absolute no-brainer that Portugal is the solution for them. And the reason for this is that the main competitive programs right now with Portugal are Spain and Greece. And the main difference between those two programs and Portugal is that in Spain and Greece, you need to live permanently, meaning 6 months a year minimum per year, 183 days minimum, for a number of years, which I believe is 7 for one and 10 years for the other. And only once you've completed, let's say, these 7 or 10 years of living 6 months a year minimum in this country, can you get access to citizenship.
Right.
What this means is two things. It means, first of all, from a lifestyle standpoint, it's not a plan B, it's a plan A. It's obviously a huge lifestyle impact. It also means that you're changing your tax residency and will start to be liable to pay taxes in this country. So if anyone is actually wanting to move to Greece or wanting to move to Spain, then that's a great option. If someone is looking for a plan B of like keeping that flexibility, then it's uncomparable to the Portuguese program, which only requires 1 week a year. So this is, I think, where the big difference lies. The other thing also is that Spain has announced already that, so Ireland had a program, it's now canceled since last year. Spain has a program that's valid, but they've now announced the end of the program, and in a month from now, it will be not accessible. It will be completely off, so there will be no Spanish Golden Visa. And the general trend that we're seeing is that they're basically stopping these programs because they find them a bit too easy to
Yeah, the
obtain.
EU doesn't like it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
because
that's
I
the
guess
general trend.
Greece, I thought Greece you could sort of get it without actually having to stay there. But if you want to work towards the citizenship, that's a different story. But it's like it works as a residency, but not really as a citizenship. I don't know. I could be wrong.
It's exactly that. So Greece and Spain, they work in the same way, or at least Spain used to work, is that you obtain the residency, which means that you have the benefits of being able to live in that country if you wish to,
Hmm.
and you have the right to travel visa-free in Schengen, etc. However, it's just a residency, and that won't convert into a citizenship unless you comply with a minimum of 6 months a year for a number of years.
Hmm.
And so, for anyone who starts looking into the difference between a residency, which is a temporary residency, it's something that gives access rights, but it's temporary. It could be subject also to different immigration legislation changes, things like that, versus a citizenship. A citizenship really is the goal because once you get the passport, you're protected, right? You don't have to comply with anything else. Your children will be able to typically get it. So the passport is really the end goal because it brings the highest level of security and stability and the least amount of requirements in order to comply. Because once you have the passport, you have the passport. You don't need to be any days in any country. Like you're just a citizen at that point. So once people understand kind of the intricacies between the programs and the difference between the residency and the passport, it becomes a no-brainer for people that Portugal is the best option for them usually.
Yeah, I mean it definitely seems to be like way ahead of the other ones in terms of the benefits. Seems like the other programs, all they offer is access to the EU, right? But with Portugal, it's like totally different in terms of the low present citizenship, not having to be a tax resident to obtain that. So I think it's pretty unique in that sense. Um, Dude, question for you. So we'll get to wrapping up in a minute, but I guess you've probably been a Portugal resident for like 4 years now. You're getting close to citizenship now.
Exactly. After 5 years, I'll be able to apply for citizenship. Exactly.
Because I've been a resident since 2022, so I'm about halfway there. So you're like maybe a year ahead of me, and can tell me how it goes.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, for now, like I'm quite happy. The truth is, I was born already French, so for me, to have this additional citizenship is something that I'm very much looking forward to because I do think that we never know like what the future holds, and I think it's
Hmm.
best to whatever citizenship we can get to go for it because unless it requires some form of disadvantage or it goes against some of the things that you have currently set up, it makes a lot of sense. It's not going to have a huge impact currently on the access that I have because I have a French and US passport, and
Hmm.
my French passport is by far stronger than my US passport. So my US, I only used to go to the US. Everything else, I use my French because it's just more access. So it's going to be probably similar again to that one, but I think it's a great thing to have because we never really know, and
Yeah, 50 years from now, you don't know
exactly.
what's
You don't know what's going to happen, and geopolitically right now the world is kind of upside down. There's things going left, right, and center, and the one thing that's clear is that we don't really know what the future holds, especially when we're talking about kind of decades ahead. So I think it's just good to plan and be able to have this as well as like an asset that we can also provide to even our children. It's just a great kind of way of planning around wealth and access.
totally. Yeah, I mean, there's no downside really, so you might as well pick it up
Precisely.
as long as you got A2 level Portuguese. But you're European, so I'm sure you got A2 at least.
Yeah, but so for that as well. So I think what you're referring to is once you do the golden visa at the end, in order to once you have a residency, in order to apply for citizenship, you need to prove language
Uh-huh.
proficiency. And in order to do this, there are a number of requirements that can be complied with. One option, which is really standard, is to have an A2 level. As you mentioned, there's a language test that's done before the citizenship in order to obtain it. But there are a number of other options actually that are available. It's an either or. And one of the very popular options that we have, especially with a lot of golden visa investors, is that they take, there are a number of online courses that are available, which are certified by the government. And if you do complete that course, one of these courses, completing meaning just to go through the course, right, and get to the end, then that qualifies for that requirement. And so it prevents you from the need to actually take a language test in order to qualify. So there are different options really that can be taken, language test being an option. And for those who don't
Hmm.
feel so keen on taking a test, would rather go through this kind of online course, that's also very much
Yeah,
an option.
that's huge. Honestly, didn't know that.
Yep, it's a big one, and especially for a lot of our investors who, yeah, again, are not keen on whatever it is. Maybe they don't feel like being like tested on a language, at their age, let's say, because they haven't been in school for a few decades
Right,
or whatever
right,
that
right.
is. It's an
Right.
option, right? And so it just offers more flexibility.
Yeah, that's honestly huge because there's a lot of naturalizations where you might have to do like a civic test in Spanish or in the language, and most people just would not pass unless they were pretty solid in the language. So that's another positive point for Portugal in this respect. Cool.
Absolutely.
So I guess we'll kind of get to wrapping up. Anything else that you wanted to mention?
Not really. I think it's been great. It's been fun to chat with you. Thank you very much for having me here. And I know that you're also yourself, more and more involved in the Portugal life, and getting kind of a new place here, etc. So also very excited to be able to have more time, face to face, and have good people coming and joining the life that we have here in Portugal.
I'm embracing my Europeanness. Cool, man. So, guys, anyone listening to this who wants to learn more about the Portugal Golden Visa, there's going to be a link in the description. I think what we'll do is have people book a 15-minute call with me first, make sure they're a good fit. And if they're a good fit, then we'll introduce them to Alex and the team over at Vida Capital and put you on the path towards the Golden Visa. So, yeah, link in the description for Alex's contact, probably for the website, Vida Capital, and also link to book a call with me. And we can check out if this will be a good opportunity for you guys and answer any questions that you have.
Perfect. Thank you very much again for hosting me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Alex. So this has been another episode of the My Latin Life podcast. Again, our guest today, Alex Ohnona from Vida Capital. And wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Really helps grow the show. Leave a review. Follow us on Twitter. Check out mylatinlife.com for more information. We put out 2 episodes a week with amazing guests like Alex, so you won't want to miss an episode. Load some up in your podcast player. Ciao for now.